They thought they knew her. But what if the woman cleaning the floor had more knowledge, power, and potential than everyone laughing at her? Let us know in the comments section below where you're watching this from. Jenna Russo wiped the sweat off her brow with the inside of her forearm, careful not to leave a streak across her temple. The weight of the vacuum hose pulled at her shoulder, same as it did every night. Room 317 had just cleared out, an honors seminar in political theory. That same class had laughed when she walked in during their mock debate, just trying to empty a trash bin near the professor's podium. One of the students, a girl with blonde curls and an expensive leather tote, whispered something and giggled. Another snapped a photo. Jenna didn't look up. She didn't flinch. She just kept walking, vacuum humming like the sound of her silence. It was easier that way. No one at Brookshire University paid much attention to her, at least not the kind that mattered. Sure, she'd get the occasional fake polite smile or a "thank you" when she handed back a lost key card. But Jenna Russo was the kind of person people walked past, not out of cruelty, at least not the obvious kind, but out of habit. She was the background. The cleanup crew. The silent shadow after their discussions of justice and change. The irony was almost poetic. Jenna pulled off her gloves and leaned against the mop closet door. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One new message. Imani, 7:04 p.m., waiting in the library. She smiled. Her daughter was the only person in the world who saw her fully. Jenna had made a quiet deal with herself: if she had to go unseen, at least Imani never would. That's why, after everyone left campus, Jenna would finish cleaning and slip into the empty lecture halls. She'd sit in the back row and study under the flicker of fluorescent lights, whispering flashcards to herself, her textbooks stacked high like walls she was slowly learning to climb. That night she had 20 more minutes before her break. She turned down the hallway toward the east wing, where Professor Ellis's office light still shone. He always stayed late, a man of few words, but kind ones. The only professor who greeted her with eye contact and called her Mrs. Russo instead of Miss or Ma'am. He was standing in the hallway holding a stack of papers. "You're here early tonight," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Trying to make a dent in the reading list," she replied, sliding the vacuum back into its compartment. "Same, except my list never ends." He smiled, then paused. "Jenna, how's the application going?" Jenna blinked. She looked down the hall, even though it was empty. "Still working on the essay. I keep rewriting the first line." "You're not applying as a janitor, Jenna. You're applying as someone who's earned it." Her throat tightened. No one called her by her first name at this school except him and Imani. "Thank you," she said quietly as he walked back into his office. Jenna turned toward the stairwell. She had to get to the quad before campus security locked the library doors. Imani liked the children's corner on the second floor. She said it smelled like new books and dreams. Outside, the air had that crisp bite of spring that tried too hard to be summer. Jenna pulled her hoodie tighter around her, the university's logo stretched across her chest like a borrowed identity. Inside the library, Imani was cross-legged beneath the window, doodling superheroes in a spiral notebook. "Hey, baby," Jenna whispered, bending to kiss the top of her head. "Mom, guess what? I taught myself the planets in order." Jenna laughed. "You're not even doing that in school yet." "I know. But I'm going to space someday. I have to be ready." "That's my girl." They walked back together in silence. Imani held her mother's pinky, the way she always did. When she didn't want to let go as they turned the corner by the student union, two college boys sat on the steps smoking. One pointed with his chin. "Ain't that the janitor who always smells like bleach?" The other laughed. "Man, why is she always around the professors anyway? She trying to get extra credit on mopping?" Their laughter bounced off the brick walls like rubber bullets, cheap, blunt, and too familiar. Jenna kept walking. She didn't even blink. But Imani heard every word. She looked up. Why'd they say that? Because they don't understand what strength looks like yet. Later that night, after putting Imani to bed in their small two-bedroom apartment above the corner bodega, Jenna sat at the kitchen table. Her fingers hovered above the laptop keys. She reread her essay draft, then backspaced the first line, again and again and again. She looked at the blank screen like it was daring her to start over again. Then she closed her eyes and whispered. I am not what you see when you walk past me. She typed it. Then paused. She smiled for the first time in a long time. The sentence felt like hers. And it was only the beginning. He said, proceed with the full script of Act 1, Section 2. It should have a minimum of 1,050 words. There should be no titles inside the script, just make the narration straight. But there should be the act number, section number, and title above the script. ChatGPT said. Act 1, Section 2, when you're only seen in silence. It started with a knock on the faculty office door. 3 soft taps that barely echoed in the empty corridor. Professor Ellis glanced up from his paperwork, the yellow light of his desk lamp reflecting off his glasses. He recognized the rhythm. Jenna peeked in. Is now okay? Of course, he said, rising from his chair. She entered, clutching a red folder like it was made of glass. I finished it. The essay. He gestured to the seat across from his desk. Let's take a look. She handed it to him, then sat quietly, hands in her lap, legs pressed together like she was shrinking herself out of habit. He read the first few lines, nodding slightly, his face unreadable, which made Jenna's stomach twist. She hated this part, the waiting to know if she was good enough. But then he looked up. Jenna, this is excellent. Raw. Personal. Unflinching. I didn't want to sugarcoat it, she said softly. You didn't. You told the truth. For a second, Jenna let herself smile. By the time she left the office, the hallway lights had dimmed into night mode. She passed a group of students in the atrium, ones who knew her face but not her name. They didn't even pause their conversation. And then she walked right in during the presentation. Didn't even look at us. Didn't she try to talk to the dean once, like she thought she was a student or something? Laughter. Not cruel, exactly, more the kind that cuts without realizing it, or caring. Jenna pulled her hoodie strings tighter. By morning, her essay had made its way through the admissions board for the accelerated degree program. Professor Ellis had pushed it through, attaching a quiet but powerful recommendation. Jenna had no idea. While she scrubbed the cafeteria floor at 6 a.m., her story was already sparking conversations among the few faculty members who saw the system for what it was, a gate that kept certain people on the outside for so long they forgot there was ever a door. 2 weeks later, her acceptance letter came in a plain manila envelope. No confetti. No fancy seal. Just a typed message. We are pleased to inform you. She cried quietly in the staff locker room, cheeks wet, the paper held to her chest like it was made of gold. But she told no one. Not yet. There were too many moments in her life where celebration had been premature. Moments where she'd allowed herself to hope, only for reality to remind her where she belonged. Not this time. This dream had to be built in the dark, quietly, like roots pushing through concrete. Days turned into months. Jenna would clean during her shift, then sit in on lectures, approved quietly by Professor Ellis, who got her guest access to classes with no attendance sheet. She studied late into the night after Imani was asleep, her textbook surrounded by sticky notes and empty coffee cups. Chloe Ramsey, the same honors student who once whispered jokes behind Jenna's back, passed her on campus every Tuesday. Never recognized her. Not once. Jenna had become an expert at making herself invisible. But invisibility had its advantages. She heard things others didn't. She's always lurking, like she thinks she belongs here. She asked the bursar for directions to the science hall last week. Why would a janitor need that? More laughter. Jenna heard it all. But now it didn't sink like it used to. She had armor now, knowledge, progress. Each exam she passed, each chapter she finished was a small rebellion. And rebellion, she'd learned, didn't have to be loud to be powerful. She wrote her final thesis on silenced narratives in institutional spaces, weaving personal experience with academic research. It was raw. Vulnerable. Unapologetic. The department approved it unanimously. That same week, she got an invitation to meet with the commencement committee. When she opened the email, she had to read the first line 3 times. Dear Miss Russo. It is with great admiration that we invite you to be this year's student commencement speaker. She dropped her phone. Imani ran into the kitchen. Mom, what happened? Jenna covered her mouth, eyes wide, her whole body trembling. Baby. I think I'm going to speak at graduation. Imani screamed so loud it scared the cat off the couch. She jumped into her mom's lap, arms tight around her neck. You did it, Mommy. You really did it. That night, they celebrated with microwave popcorn and orange soda in plastic cups. It wasn't champagne, but it was perfect. The days leading up to graduation felt like a dream, underwater, slow, echoey, unreal. Jenna's cap and gown were delivered to her home. The fabric heavier than she expected. Her name was embroidered on the label. Jenna Russo. Department of Sociology. She held it to her chest. It was the first time she truly believed she had crossed the threshold, from background to spotlight. And still, she told no one at work. On the morning of graduation, Jenna showed up for her shift in uniform. She emptied the trash, mopped the halls, and cleaned the faculty restrooms like it was any other Friday. As she walked past Chloe and her friends, gathered in their glittery graduation robes, Chloe sneered. Can't believe they make the janitors work during commencement. You'd think they'd at least wait until after. One of her friends laughed. Maybe she's hoping someone drops a diploma so she can pretend it's hers. They didn't even realize Jenna was holding her own gown, folded in a garment bag beneath her cleaning cart. That was okay. They'd see soon enough. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when Jenna stood in front of the full-length mirror. Gown zipped. Tassel hanging from the edge of her cap. Breath slow and deliberate. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the window AC unit, and Imani humming to herself in the next room. Graduation day. She still couldn't say it aloud without her voice catching in her throat. She touched the pin near her collar, Imani's gift. A tiny silver star. For luck, her daughter had whispered when she gave it to her that morning, wrapping her arms around her. Arms around her mother's waist like she always did when proud. Jenna felt taller today, not because of the heels she wasn't used to wearing, but because for the first time in years, she didn't have to shrink. She didn't have to quiet herself to survive. She didn't have to apologize for being here. The ceremony wasn't until noon, but she was already moving, already pacing, already trying to steady the pounding in her chest. Her name had been printed in the program, not as a staff member, not as a footnote, not in an asterisk explaining why she was present. She was the keynote speaker. As she stepped outside, cap in hand, neighbors waved at her. Miss Thelma from downstairs gasped and clapped. Jenna Russo. Look at you, baby. I told them folks at the church you were going places. Jenna smiled wide and hugged her tightly, letting the scent of lavender and menthol wrap around her like childhood. Thank you, Miss Thelma. You always believed in me. She arrived at Brookshire University with her robe still folded over her arm. Nobody looked twice as she walked across the same cobblestone courtyard she'd swept for years. She passed a group of seniors taking photos with their families, balloons floating, cameras flashing. Chloe Ramsey stood among them, perfect white teeth in every shot. She wore a custom sash that read honors in gold script, and her shoes probably cost more than Jenna's rent. When Chloe's eyes caught Jenna walking by, her brows lifted for a second. Confusion passed over her face, then a smirk. "You're not working today," she said, loud enough for her circle to hear. "You off to clean the faculty lounge or something?" Jenna didn't stop. Didn't respond. She didn't owe her a single syllable. Chloe laughed, then turned back to her friends. Inside the preparation hall, students were gathering in their designated rows. Jenna was led to a different area, behind the stage, where a faculty assistant offered her water and a printed copy of her speech in case she needed it. She declined. Every word lived inside her like breath. The president of the university, Dr. Harold Linton, approached her with an outstretched hand. "Ms. Russo, it's an honor to have you today. Your story, it moved the committee deeply." She shook his hand. "Thank you for the opportunity. I only wish I had known sooner," he said. "You've been here, right under our noses." Jenna nodded, polite, but her eyes didn't smile. "You didn't ask before." That's what she wanted to say. She turned toward the curtain and peeked through. Rows and rows of folding chairs stretched across the lawn, hundreds of students, parents, deans. Chloe. All of them waiting for the ceremony to begin. All of them expecting a speaker they didn't yet know. Behind her, the assistant tapped lightly. "You'll be going on after the president's welcome." She nodded, fingers tracing the edge of her speech one last time. But she wouldn't be reading it. Not today. When the ceremony began, Jenna sat quietly backstage, listening to the polite applause, the opening remarks, the obligatory jokes from the dean. She heard her name mentioned, an exceptional student who rose through extraordinary circumstances. She heard the crowd's polite curiosity. Some murmurs. Then she heard her cue. "Please welcome this year's student speaker, Jenna Russo." She stepped onto the stage, and the world went silent. She could feel it, the confusion washing over the audience like a wave. Some students sat up straighter, tilting their heads. Others exchanged glances. Professors blinked. Even Chloe, seated with her honors group, furrowed her brow in disbelief. Jenna stood tall at the podium, her tassel brushing against the mic. She looked out at the sea of faces, most of them didn't know her name. But they were about to. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, unshaken. "You've seen me before, many of you. I've walked past your dorms, cleaned your lecture halls, picked up after your celebrations and your protests. You've seen me, but you never really looked." A hush fell across the field. No more murmuring. Just the sound of truth cutting through expectation. "I started working at Brookshire University to provide for my daughter. I cleaned these buildings while you studied inside them. I mopped floors while some of you talked about changing the world. I never interrupted. I never asked for recognition. But I was listening. And I was learning." She paused. Let the silence breathe. "I enrolled in classes without making noise. I studied after midnight. I passed exams after mopping bathrooms. I wrote essays after scrubbing windows. Because I believe that where you begin should never define how far you go." The crowd was still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "I've heard the whispers. I've seen the stares. I've felt the weight of your laughter when you thought I wasn't paying attention. And I've carried it with me every single day. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was building something bigger than shame." The crowd. Chloe sat frozen. "I stand here not as your janitor, but as your classmate. Your peer. Your equal. I earned this degree like you did, page by page, hour by hour. But my path was paved with brooms and silence." She paused again, locking eyes with a few students in the front row. My daughter is here today. She's 11. And she thinks I can do anything. I want her to be right. The first clap came from the far left side. Then another. Then a rising wave. Within seconds, the audience stood. Applause thundered through the campus. Jenna stepped back from the mic, eyes wet but smiling. She bowed her head slightly, not out of humility, but out of victory. She didn't need their validation. But she had just earned it anyway. The applause didn't stop. It rolled on like a tide that refused to pull back, washing over Jenna in waves of something she never expected. Recognition. Real. Undeniable. Recognition not for the work she did with her hands, but for the world she built inside her mind, while no one was looking. She took one slow breath and stepped down from the stage. Every step felt like a chapter closing. Every cheer in the crowd echoed years of silence being undone. For once, she wasn't pretending to belong. She had become. Backstage, the faculty assistant handed her a tissue with trembling fingers. You just changed something out there, she said. I don't know what yet, but you did. Jenna smiled, eyes glassy. It was time. As she walked through the back corridor toward the ceremony exit, the voices behind her swelled. Faculty whispered to each other. Students reached for their phones, already pulling up social media. Photos snapped. Hashtags formed. The janitor they ignored had just become the face of perseverance. But Jenna didn't stop to read the noise. She only looked for one thing. And there, near the back row of the crowd, was Imani. Her arms raised high, jumping like her small body couldn't hold all her joy. Mani! She shrieked, barreling into her mother's arms. Jenna dropped to her knees and wrapped her up tightly, breathing in the scent of bubblegum and school paper and love. You were amazing, Imani said, her words coming fast and breathless. Everyone stood up, Mommy. They were all clapping. Jenna laughed through tears. I saw, baby. I saw. A voice from behind interrupted the moment. Ms. Russo. She turned to find President Linton again, this time without the stiff formality. His eyes softer. Unsure, like he wasn't sure how to. I just received word from the Dean of Sociology, he said. Your thesis has been nominated for publication in our academic journal. They'd like to offer you a lecturing position beginning this fall. Jenna blinked. You want me to teach here? He nodded. If you'll accept it. For a long second, she was silent, not from doubt, but from the sheer weight of how far she'd come. She thought of the years scrubbing tile with her dreams folded in her pocket. The nights when her body gave out but her mind refused to stop learning. The rejection letters. The side comments. The mornings she'd get home from work and still help Imani study spelling before her eyes could even stay open. She smiled. I accept. From somewhere in the crowd, a student shouted, Yo, that's the janitor from Anderson Hall. More cheers erupted, and this time Jenna didn't flinch. She waved, because now the name janitor didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a title she'd worn with pride on the path to something bigger. It wasn't who she was anymore, but it was part of the story. And every story needs roots. Later that afternoon, as the campus cleared out and families spilled into restaurants and lawn parties, Jenna walked through the halls once more, this time not to clean, but to remember. She paused by the lecture room where Chloe had once laughed at her presence. The door was open. Inside, Chloe sat slouched in a chair alone, twirling her graduation cap in her fingers. Jenna stepped into the doorway. Chloe looked up quickly, face flushed. Oh, hi. Hi, Jenna replied, standing still. She wasn't angry. She wasn't looking for closure. But she also wasn't going to shrink. I didn't know you were a student, Chloe said after a moment, her voice low. You never asked. Chloe nodded. Her eyes dropped to the floor. You were incredible up there. Thank you. A long pause. Guess I've got a lot of unlearning to do, Chloe muttered. Jenna smiled just a little. Most people do. Just try not to laugh at the people still on their way up. You never know who you're mocking. Chloe nodded, eyes brimming. I won't forget. Jenna turned and walked away. By the time she reached the courtyard, the sun had dipped just enough to cast a gold glaze across the brick buildings. Imi ran ahead, her cape, a handmade one from her super scientist costume, flapping behind her like it could carry her into orbit. As Jenna watched her daughter dance under the shade of the cherry trees, she knew this was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, a video of her speech hit over 3 million views. The caption read, "Black janitor stuns Ivy League crowd as graduation speaker." But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the email she got from a single mom in Detroit who said she started night school because of her. What mattered were the 3 janitors at Brookshire who signed up for GED classes after seeing her walk across that stage. What mattered was Imani, now signing her school drawings with Imani Russo, future professor in loopy crayon letters. One afternoon, as Jenna was prepping her lecture notes in the same office where Professor Ellis once encouraged her to dream bigger, she looked out the window. The view hadn't changed. But her world had. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she said, expecting a student. Instead, Ellis himself walked in holding 2 coffees. "I hear the new hire needs caffeine," he grinned. Jenna chuckled, standing. "You didn't have to." "No," he said, handing her a cup, "but I wanted to. I watched you change the culture of this place without ever demanding it. That deserves more than applause. It deserves respect." Jenna looked at him, her eyes steady, voice soft. "Thank you for seeing me before anyone else did." He raised his cup. To being seen. She raised hers to meet his. To never being invisible again. And in that room filled with books, warm light, and quiet echoes of a journey that had finally found its voice, Jenna Russo, once the overlooked janitor, smiled. Because now the whole world knew her.